June begins with one of the most powerful positive alignments that we're going to see in all of 2026. That means big opportunities for advancement lie ahead if you know what to look for and if you know how to take advantage of them. This is because the two benefic planets, Jupiter and Venus, are coming together in a conjunction in the sign of Jupiter's exaltation in Cancer. This is an excellent time to foster the support that you need to achieve your wildest dreams. And while this is a rare green light window where Jupiter has the most support that it's going to have in 12 years, while it's conjunct, again, the benefic planet Venus, bringing things together, bringing support wherever you need it most, this is not the only thing that's happening this month. This month is really happening in 3 distinct phases. And so while we have this rare green light window at the beginning of the month, especially between June 5th and June 12th, where there's just so much extra positivity, things are going to shift pretty dramatically as we get into the middle of the month, because we're going to have Uranus squaring the lunar nodes, which brings turbulence, which brings upheaval, which brings change that comes very suddenly. But that change is part of our destiny. It's part of what we need to align with in order to move forward with our soul's evolution and what we came here to accomplish. Also mid-month, we're going to have Chiron entering a new sign in Taurus, dredging up a whole new repertoire of wounds, vulnerabilities, insecurities, shame in areas of life that we haven't really touched upon prior to this transit. And the last time we saw this alignment was from 1977 to 1984, and so it's been quite a while. Some of us might have never actually experienced a Chiron in Taurus transit, and for those who were born under Chiron in Taurus, you are going through a Chiron return, which we'll talk about a little bit more later on in this video. And then at the end of this month, things slow down quite a bit as Mercury stations to go retrograde in the sign of Cancer, where we become more internalized, more introspective, a little bit less outward focused. And then Jupiter changes signs to bring luck and good fortune to a brand new area of our lives. But it's going to feel very different to that Jupiter exaltation in Cancer, especially at the beginning, because Jupiter is opposing Pluto and making all sorts of different outer planetary alignments, some positive, some not so positive. And so we're going to cover all of these big major transits for the month of June in this video, and then some. But before we dive in, I just want to mention that I am doing this video in a very different format than what you might be used to. And so in this June forecast, what I've decided to try out is I'm going to go much deeper into everything that's going on in the month ahead. I'm going to give you a lot more detail and a lot more to work with when it comes to understanding the energies of the month. And while I'm moving through the month transit by transit, I'm going to be covering which signs will be impacted the most by each of these alignments. And while I'm moving through the month ahead, transit by transit, I'm going to be covering the sun, moon, and rising signs that are going to be impacted the most by each of these planetary alignments along the way as we go through the video. And when it comes to the all signs forecast, I'm still going to be doing those, just not in this video. I'm going to be breaking down some of the biggest transits as we go through the month and doing more focused videos for all 12 signs along the way. And so make sure you're subscribed to my channel so you never miss an important astrology update, and so you don't miss the deeper, more focused insight into those specific transits, because there's a lot of really big ones coming up in the month ahead. And also something that really helps this channel and helps me is if you comment below and let me know how you feel about this new format. I'm doing this because it's something I've been wanting to try out for quite some time, and to be honest with you, the algorithms have changed a bit, and so it's kind of pushing me in that direction to experiment and try new things. I want to do a much deeper dive, much deeper insight into every single month for you guys, but I also want to continue to give you the all signs forecast that you know and love, which I, again, will continue to do throughout the month. And you're going to get that all signs insight with each transit in a smaller, sharper format. And it also really helps my channel. It helps promote this video in the algorithms when you like the video, and also when apparently you hype it in the first week. I don't really know exactly what that means. All I know is more people will see this video if you do that, so please do. So in the spirit of doing a more comprehensive overview of every single month, you really can't look at the astrology just in one month as its own situation, in order to really look at it holistically, you have to view it in the context of what came before and what's coming after. And what's interesting is that the energy of this month, the transits of this month, are really building toward the really big, wild outer planet configurations that are coming next month in July. And so this is going to be a very good segue into that energy, and we'll talk about how this impacts July as well. But before we dive into that, we need to know where we're coming from, because the astrology, the transits, they don't exist in a vacuum, and we're still feeling some of the energies from the prior months that have led us to this space in June. And so back in February, if you remember, we had a massive conjunction between Saturn and Neptune in the sign of Aries, and that energy is still there. Even though Saturn and Neptune are separating, they are still in a wide conjunction. They are still playing off of that energy, which for a lot of people has been causing some very confusing challenges that you have to navigate rather quickly. And so even though that energy was exact at the end of February, it continued on in March and especially in April, as we had a massive stellium that built in the sign of Aries. And that stellium involved Mars, and we had a Mars-Saturn conjunction. Now that brought a lot of interesting energy on the world stage collectively, but individually it brought up for a lot of people a bit of a crisis where something came up, a big hurdle, a big obstacle that you had to just plow through, you had to deal with in a way that was maybe a little bit hasty, where you had to just give up and let go and allow things to play out, but you also had to put some work in to make it go the way that you wanted it to go so it didn't completely fall apart. And I saw a lot of people going through a lot of challenge in the month of April and even into May, especially those of you who have sun, moon, rising in the sign of Aries, or any prominent planetary placements in the sign of Aries. Now, if you don't know where your planets lie in your birth chart, make sure you download my free Astrology 101 quick reference guide down in the link in the description below. This is going to walk you through how to decode your birth chart. This is going to walk you through how to understand all of your planetary placements. And this is also going to give you a better understanding of what we're talking about, especially in this video, where we're going deeper into all of the planetary alignments, because you'll know where you have planetary energies that are being hit by these transits. Now, through the month of May, things quieted down quite a bit because we didn't have all of this really crazy energy still being amped up, but we did have a lot of Pluto activation. And so we were still coming off of that stellium in Aries. We were still dealing with the ramifications of it as it was separating. And then Pluto came into the mix. We had Pluto stationing to go retrograde. And then at the end of May, which this is actually still coming up at the time that I'm releasing this video, it's very, very active. We have, I should say, a Mars square to Pluto. This is intensity. This is energy where things come up that are very psychologically difficult. This is where action needs to be taken, very focused action, in order for us to achieve our goals. This is where people sometimes become very ruthless. And in the fixed signs, this is where we become very literally fixated on creating something that we want to create, on doing something that we want to do, on taking a very important action. Or we can become fixated on some of the more negative energies of Mars, which include resentment, especially in the sign of Taurus, where it's more stubborn and has a harder time letting go of things that it's been holding on to when it comes to anger. This is also where we can become fixated on things like revenge, things that are not necessarily productive. And if you find yourself experiencing those energies from the outside, externally, people kind of throwing bad energy at you, starting conflict, drudging up old resentments, old arguments, this is something to make note of. This is the energy that's there, and there's a reason for it. However, I don't think that this is something that's going to get resolved very easily right now. Even though Pluto is all about kind of the extremes, it's either all in or all out. It kind of cuts cords. This is where you just cut your energy away from someone, ghost them, you no longer want anything to do with them. In the fixed signs, it's a little bit different. This is where they're just going to keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. And I don't know that this is a time where resolution comes up, but it shows you that that problem that you thought was no longer a problem within that relationship is still a problem, because they haven't let it go. They haven't forgotten about it. They haven't forgiven you. And so that's an important insight that will help you moving forward. If you are the one that's feeling resentment, if you're the one who's feeling hostility, especially if it's linked to something from the past that's not necessarily happening in the present moment anymore, and you're realizing now that you haven't moved past it, you haven't let it go, now is the time to put in that work. It's probably not a good time to confront someone unless you absolutely have to, but this is the time to start looking at the root of that issue, looking at your role in creating that issue and perpetuating it and keeping it going, as well as their role. Because again, it takes two people in these types of situations, but you really need to be looking at yourself. Mars is about taking action. Mars is about your role. Mars is about you actually doing something to deal with this situation, as opposed to just sitting and stewing in it, which is a very Mars-Pluto thing. Mars-Pluto energy can have us really sitting and brooding and just baking in that negativity, baking in that resentment, baking in that hostility. And it can turn into something that's very unhealthy. And I've seen in people's birth charts with these types of alignments, this can turn into very literal physical health issues in the body if you're not careful and if you don't find a good outlet. And so this is a good time to maybe take some space to reflect, to go deeper, to figure out what this is all about truly and deeply. And this is a time to maybe start taking steps toward resolution if this is something that's applicable to you. And this carries through into the month of June because this is happening at the very end of May. The other thing that's happening in May that's leading into June is that the full moon is in the sign of Sagittarius on May 31st, and this leads directly into the month of June. This launches us into the new energies that we're going to be experiencing in the month ahead. And what's interesting about the full moon in Sagittarius is that it is ruled by Jupiter. And so as I mentioned at the start of this video, the very first big, bold energy that we're experiencing in the month of June is a very powerful and a very positive one, which is the alignment between the two benefic planets in traditional astrology, Venus and Jupiter in the sign of Cancer. But before that happens, Mercury actually shifts its energy from its home sign of Gemini into the sign of Cancer. When Mercury enters any of the water signs, our thoughts become a little bit more intuitive. Our decision making becomes a little bit more driven by emotion rather than logic. This is absolutely the case when Mercury enters the sign of Cancer. This is where we're not going to be thinking about the facts and figures so much as we're going to be feeling into things. And you'll notice for a lot of people, especially if you have strong Cancer energy in your chart, sun, moon, rising, personal planets even, you might find yourself expressing your ideas, your opinions in the context of the way you feel about it, as opposed to the rational, the logical, the linear, or the tangible. Then on June 9th, we have one of the biggest, most impactful energies for the entire month of June, which is that big conjunction between Venus and Jupiter. This is happening at 25 degrees, 46 minutes in the sign of Cancer. So if you have your sun, moon, or rising sign anywhere really from 20 to 30 degrees in the sign of Cancer, Scorpio, or Pisces, lucky you, because this energy is going to be impacting you in a very beautiful, very positive, very harmonious way. Look out for opportunities for support. Look out for opportunities where other people or situations can come in to kind of hold space for you. This isn't a direct energy. This is a more receptive energy because it is in a water sign, which is considered a feminine sign. Doesn't mean masculine or feminine in terms of like sex or gender. Really what this is describing is the nature of the sign and the way that it operates. And so when planets are in a feminine sign, they tend to act in a way that's more receptive, more responsive, as opposed to directly taking action. And so in this particular context, this is about being receptive to new opportunities that are coming your way. Because Venus is in the mix, this could help bring you together with someone or something that is a match for what it is that you're trying to manifest in your life. And this isn't just hitting the water signs positively, this is going to create a positive impact in everyone's chart and in everyone's life across the board. And so this is especially positive, again, for those water signs, but also for people who have sun, moon, rising, or personal planets in Virgo or in Taurus, because this will be making a sextile with those planetary energies, which is more supportive, but in a way that you have to actually take action on. and activate. So it's kind of like the opportunity shows up somewhere, but you actually have to do something and be a little bit more straightforward in creating that opportunity, or taking advantage of that opportunity and co-creating it with whatever or whoever is stepping in to guide you on that path. Now, for other people, it's going to show up in different ways, but those are where it's going to be the most supportive. For those of you who have sun, moon, or rising in the cardinal signs, so in the sign of Aries, in the sign of Capricorn, in the sign of Libra, this might look a little bit different. It could be that you have very elevated expectations for an opportunity that does come your way, but it does not meet those expectations. That does not mean that the support that you're given, that the help that comes in, that the new abundance that is showing up in your life is negative. It just means that your expectations are not realistic to the situation, and objectively other people on the outside looking in are going to be like, why are you not excited about this? Why are you disappointed? This is amazing. Look what you've just accomplished. Look what's come into your life just now. This could also be you really pushing and overdoing something, especially if you have, let's say, Mars or any of your personal planets, but especially Mars, your rising sign, in these cardinal signs, especially at the end degrees between 20 and 30 degrees in the signs of Libra, Capricorn, or Aries. You might find yourself pushing too hard, going too far, kind of like overextending yourself as a result of some sort of opportunity that you see or that you're able to seize. And so just kind of keep that in mind as we're moving through the beginning part of the month. Now, as I mentioned before, the peak period of this energy is really from the 5th through the 12th of June. And so that's when you really want to take this and run with it. This is one of my favorite electional astrology periods for the entire month. And if you don't already know, electional astrology refers to the art of choosing the best possible timing to ensure success in whatever it is that you want to accomplish. And so really what you're trying to do here is align the chart with your desired outcome. Now, it's more nuanced than just initiating something when there's a Jupiter-Venus conjunction. You really want to get very specific and nuanced and pick a very appropriate chart for the thing that you're trying to accomplish with an appropriate moon sign. And you want the moon to be doing something really positive as its last aspect before it leaves that sign. You want it to align with your birth chart really well. All of those things I talk about in my electional astrology mini course, by the way, if that's something you're interested in. But if you're just looking for a general good time where there's more ease and there is the ability to expand upon something, this is the time where that is happening. This is the green light moment for a lot of people. And so whatever it is that you've been feeling very called toward, whatever it is that feels nourishing and nurturing to your soul, that's coming up in your reality right now, that you are able to grow, this is the time where you can take advantage of that. This is a lucky time for a lot of people. This is also very centered around Cancerian themes. And so this could be a lot of emotional growth. This could be a lot of deepening or expanding upon emotional connection and support, very literally, with other people, because Venus is our love language. It's the way we show up in relationships. I would say around this time, a lot of people are going to be experiencing more positive connections and more beneficial opportunities that are mutually beneficial within those connections with others. This is a great time to meet someone new. This is a great time to go out and socialize. This is a great time for anything that is going to help support you socially. And this is also a really important time to expand on your comfort zones and for you to potentially provide opportunities for other people with you as their support system, with you as the one that's reaching out and sharing that opportunity that they get to respond to. And so I love this energy for the start of the month. And this is not just happening on June 9th. We are revisiting this energy when Mercury stations to go retrograde on June 29th, because it's almost at the exact degree. It's at like 26 degrees. This is at 25 degrees, 46 minutes. And so I really feel that we are going to have a two-part saga of this Venus-Jupiter conjunction, even though Venus will have left the sign of Cancer by that time, because we are going back and reflecting on it. There's something that's going to come up that we're going to have to revisit, redo, rethink as a result of the opportunity that we took hold of at the start of this month. Then as we move into the middle of the month, things start to shift. So on June 12th, we have two big things happening. First and foremost, Mercury is going into the shadow period for the retrograde. So what does that mean? It means that Mercury enters the same degree in the zodiac where it will rest when it stations to go direct at the end of the retrograde in July. And so Mercury stations to go direct on July 23rd at 16 degrees, and on June 12th, it enters that 16th degree. This is also where Mercury starts to slow down. And so this is where we need to not rush things. This is where you'll start to see some of those Mercury retrograde problems, some of those mistakes, some of those miscommunications will start to arise during the shadow period, especially as we get closer and closer and closer to June 29th when Mercury officially stations. Also on June 12th, we have a wild card, very destabilizing energy with Uranus squaring the lunar nodes. Now on this day, Uranus is actually going to be squaring the true node. I've started to lean toward using the mean node, although I'm not all the way there. I still look at both. And so Uranus will square the mean node on June 20th. And so I would look at both dates as periods of disruption, as well as a few days before and a few days after. And so we have this really kind of lengthy period here with Uranus squaring both versions of the lunar nodes that really starts to become active around the start of June and really reaches its peak kind of around that 12th to 20th period and starts to dissipate by the end of the month. But it's really going to be there for quite some time. And this is happening while Uranus is freshly in the sign of Gemini for good right now, but also as the lunar nodes are starting to move out of the signs of Pisces and Virgo. And this is a big deal because this is kind of the last ditch effort for the universe to align us with our path, to align us with our purpose, to bring us to the point that we need to be for our soul's growth and evolution before our entire experience, our entire karma changes later this summer. And so this is a shock and awe energy for a lot of people. It's where the signs, the synchronicities, the events that transpire feel like they have extra importance. It's a very eclipsy feeling energy. But because Uranus is in the mix, it's something that we never could have anticipated or expected outside of the context of what's going on here in our lives. And this is not going to impact everybody equally. And so this Uranus square to the lunar nodes is really going to especially impact people who have sun, moon, and rising in the mutable signs. So the mutable signs are Gemini, Sagittarius, Virgo, and Pisces. Those are the people that are going to be feeling this the most, especially people who have a lot of Gemini, have a lot of Virgo, have a lot of Pisces at the early degrees of those signs. So really 0 to like 5 degrees, you're going to be really in for it. And this is not a bad thing, but it is a time where you're going to have to pivot, right? And so expect the unexpected and plan a little bit more lightly during this period in June. Something's going to come in and shift your plans in a really big, probably dramatic way. And so if this is you and you start to feel a little bit of anxiety around this, you start to question what's going on, you start to feel more unsettled as a result of the events that are unfolding in your life, just know that these disruptions to your experience are actually redirections. If the Uranus square to the lunar nodes knocks you off your path, consider whether that path was actually yours to begin with, because it's very likely that it wasn't. In evolutionary astrology, a planet squaring the nodes is known as a skipped step. It's something that we have to go back and revisit and redo and do better in this lifetime, because maybe we didn't do it right the first time, or we kind of made some sort of misstep. And so this is a time for us to kind of course correct in a big way, and it could impact us not just right now, not just here, not just in this lifetime, but in many lifetimes to come. And so take this moment seriously and kind of allow things to unfold before you judge the situation and before you kind of freak out about your plans being thwarted, because they probably will be, but it's going to be for a reason, and you'll find meaning in it definitely later on down the line. So on June 13th, Venus leaves that sign-based conjunction with Jupiter in the sign of Cancer and moves into the sign of Leo. Jupiter in Leo is very heartfelt, very generous, very grand in the way that it expresses its love and appreciation for others. It's a little bit more luxurious, a little bit more fun. This is a really beautiful time to take pleasure in going out there, going dancing, going to a fancy restaurant, doing something out and about that is just really fun and brings you a lot of joy, because this is a very joyful energy, a very playful energy. And this is going to benefit the fire signs especially. And so if you have your sun, moon, or rising in Leo, in Aries, or in Sagittarius, this is your time to shine. You're going to feel more charismatic. You're going to feel more likable. People are going to be more drawn to you. You're going to feel probably more beautiful or more attractive, especially if this is your rising sign energy that this is impacting. And this is a really great time if your rising sign is being impacted to get a haircut, to get a new look, to get a new wardrobe, to get that, whatever it is that you wanted to do to enhance your appearance. This is also a time where your warmth, your creativity, and your personal magnetism will be amplified. And so I love this energy for the fire signs, but it's also really good for people who have sun, moon, or rising in Gemini or in Libra. It's good for everyone. Venus is not necessarily a bad thing. It can make you a little bit too relaxed, a little bit too chill, a little bit lazy, especially if you have a lot of fixed sign energy. It might make you just want to kind of take a load off or indulge in some way. But for the most part, it brings good fortune wherever it touches. It brings connection that you need wherever it touches, and it brings ease into different areas of your life. But yeah, Gemini and Libra will be having this energy in a sextile, and so it's going to be positive for you as well. Then on June 14th, we have a new moon in the sign of Gemini at 24 degrees, and this is pretty unaspected. There is a sextile, kind of a wide sextile with Chiron, which is about to leave the sign of Aries and move into Taurus in just a couple of days. And so you could see that as kind of like a last energy to initiate some sort of healing, some sort of wrapping up of resolving old wounds, vulnerability, insecurities, trauma, or to kind of wrap things up when it comes to creating a situation where you can lead others to heal through the issues that you've dealt with yourself. But for the most part, this is not the wildest energy. This is a really good time to set intentions for community connection, to have important conversations, to think through something, or to make an important decision. This is a really important time for setting intentions for anything that's more mental than physical. And so if you want to learn something new, if you want to pursue some sort of education, if you want to start a blog, if you want to share information in some way, this is a good time to set intentions for all of those things. This new moon is going to be more powerful for people who have sun, moon, and rising at the end degrees of Gemini. So anywhere from, I would say, 22 to 26 degrees, you're going to be feeling this really intensely. This is going to be a really big reset for you. And especially if this is your sun that's in Gemini at those degrees, it is your solar return. And so this is a new moon solar return year, which means that this is a big cosmic reset for you. Overall, though, not the wildest energy, a good time to set intentions for all things social, communicative, and anything that has to do with growing your intelligence or sharing your knowledge with other people. Then on June 19th, we have the big moment that I've been excited to talk about for this entire video, which is Chiron, the asteroid, the centaur, the wounded healer, moving from Aries into the sign of Taurus. The last time that Chiron was actually in Taurus was in 1984, and it's going to be in Taurus from June 19th of this year until May 5th of 2034. And so this is roughly an 8-year transit where we're going to be diving deep into new wounds, new vulnerabilities, new insecurities that we're going to have to work on and work through in a completely fresh area of our lives. And now this is something that I am going to talk about much more in detail in a separate video that will be coming out in roughly 2 weeks on Chiron transiting Taurus. So again, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss that important astrology update. But we will touch on who's going to be impacted the most by this and how. But I really want to start doing a little bit of a dive here into Chiron and Taurus first. And so this is the most historically layered, emotionally resonant, and genuinely rare transit of the entire month, because this is not something that happens very frequently. And Chiron and Taurus will be impacting us both collectively and individually, sometimes in very different ways. Taurus is a fixed earth sign, and it is ruled by the planet Venus. This makes it the most material and physical of all of the zodiac signs. It's the most connected to Venusian themes of materialism, of actually dealing with the tangible, the physical, of dealing with with finances even. This is also an earth sign. Earth signs are all about things that are very grounded and rooted in reality, in real life scenarios. Taurus is very connected to the earth and land very literally. Taurus also has a special connection to food. It's very food oriented and food motivated, especially because of that Venusian energy. That Venus is very much connected to the sensory experience, taste, touch, smell. And as a fixed sign, Taurus craves stability. It craves security. It wants things to stay comfortable and to stay the same, especially on that material level. Now, Chiron in astrology is not a planet, it is an asteroid. It's a more minor influence, but it still packs a pretty big punch. It is known as the wounded healer for a reason, but it has less to do with our physical health and our physical wounds than it does with our psychological, mental, and emotional well-being and wounds. And so Chiron is very deeply connected to old traumas, old vulnerabilities that stem usually from early childhood experiences. Chiron represents things that make us feel ashamed, moments in our life that feel embarrassing, that feel like we shouldn't have experienced that make us feel awkward. Chiron in the mythology is this centaur that came out half horse, half human, but it wasn't supposed to be that way. And so Chiron is that part of ourselves that feels like it's not good enough, that feels like it's wrong in some way. And collectively, it has to do with that same sensation of shame, of guilt, of vulnerability, of insecurity, of awkwardness, of not being enough. And collectively, Chiron and Taurus can bring up insecurity around finances very literally. In fact, the last time that Chiron was in the sign of Taurus was March 29th of 1977 all the way through to April 11th of 1984. And this was a time period where we experienced in the United States a recession in 1981. And so there is energy around that back then. And even more significant was the transit before that from 1926 to 1934, which, as we all know, was the period that housed the Great Depression. Now, this had massive significance on people's wealth, on their material stability and security, on the employment rates, and this was a global issue. Now, that's not to say that we're entering into a depression. That's not what I'm suggesting here. And that's partly because the Great Depression was connected to many different transits that were happening together to create the circumstances that led to that experience in the collective. When there's something really big like that happening in the astrology, it's never that there's just one transit that's impacting it and that's creating that situation. And nothing in astrology exists in a vacuum. And so that's probably not going to play out in the exact same way. And yes, there was a recession back in 1981, the last time Chiron was in Taurus, and that could be indicative of financial instability this time around, which we're already starting to experience. So it wouldn't be surprising to have something like that come about again during this Chiron in Taurus transit anytime now through 2036. And we'll dive deeper into all of this in the separate video that I'm creating on Chiron in the sign of Taurus, but I wanted to give you a little overview of what that might look like collectively when it comes to our material security. Because Taurus is also connected to food, we could experience food insecurity or instability around our food sources. There could also be issues with food and the body. And so back in the 1977 through 1984 period, anorexia and eating disorders became like this epidemic. They became a much bigger thing, and they were even added to the DSM during that time period. Now, as I'm filming this in 2026, we're seeing Ozempic being this huge, massive thing, and we're seeing all these pictures with celebrities looking emaciated, looking like they are ill from taking this drug. And it's a thing that a lot of people are utilizing. And so I'm wondering, looking at this, if there's going to be some sort of new eating disorder or new disorder that comes up that's related to weight loss drugs like Ozempic. Taurus also rules the earth and the land itself. It's the most connected out of all the signs to Mother Earth. And this is a time where Mother Earth's wounds might become more apparent. We might be looking more at the environment. We might be looking more at specific ecosystems and how to repair the damage that's been done. again. This could also bring some sort of ecological wound, some sort of ecological disaster, and there is historical precedent for that. Again, that we'll talk about more in the deep dive into Chiron and Taurus later on this month. But I just want to bring that up to illustrate some of the things that we might be seeing on more of a larger scale, especially because Chiron does have broader implications because it is slower moving, it is more generational, it is something that does tend to impact the collective way more so. When we had Chiron transiting Aries, which it still is at the time of this video, we saw a lot of wounds around identity, around gender, around masculinity. There was a lot of very Aries stuff going on involving Chiron, and as we shift into Taurus, we're going to see those collective wounds shifting as well. Now, on a personal level, this could also be very much about what we value on a material, tangible, physical level. This could be about how we care for our bodies. This could be wounds, vulnerabilities, and insecurities around our physical bodies. This could be wounds, insecurities, and vulnerabilities that come up around materialism and material possessions, and it could go either way. It could be that there's some sort of guilt around being more materialistic or having resources. It could be that there's some sort of guilt or shame around not having as much. It could be that something that was once very stable in our lives becomes a source of strain, becomes a source of wounding, becomes a source of trauma, or brings up old trauma, old wounds, old vulnerabilities that we need to heal on a more personal level, so that way we can move forward in a more complete way. That way we can move forward and maybe help to heal others through the same issues that we've just gone through. I would also say that with Chiron in the sign of Taurus, let thy food be thy medicine, because Taurus is all about food. And so this is going to be a really important time for us collectively and individually to look at the sources of our food and what we're putting into our bodies way more so than we already have been. It's going to be looking at how the way we grow food impacts the earth, how our dollar is voting for the way that this food is actually being produced, and how all of this impacts us very physically when it comes to health versus illness. And so this is something that we'll be thinking about both on an individual level, especially for certain signs, but also collectively. Now, I promised I'd give you a teaser of Chiron and Taurus and who it's going to impact the most. And so obviously, as Chiron moves to the sign of Taurus, it's going to impact you Taurus people the most. You might find yourself feeling more insecure about your personality, your persona, your identity out in the world. You might find yourself feeling more insecure about your path and purpose in life. You might find yourself feeling more insecure about your looks. You might find yourself feeling more insecure internally and emotionally. You might have a lot of emotional stuff that may be drudged up around that time. And so again, we'll dive deeper into this in the all signs forecast, but just know that this is a time of really deep healing and introspection where things are going to be brought up and things are going to feel a little bit more sensitive and vulnerable than they normally do for you. And it's not just Taurus that will be impacted by this Chiron transit in a way that doesn't feel quite so light and warm and fuzzy. It's going to be all of the fixed signs. And so this is not just Taurus, but this is also Scorpio, Leo, and Aquarius that will be feeling this in a more challenging way, that will be challenged to heal and to work on those old wounds and insecurities and to heal through maybe some new ones as well. Now, those of you who have sun, moon, or rising in Virgo or Capricorn might be experiencing this a lot more positively. This is where you might be coming into your own as a healer of your own right, especially on a very physical level. I think we're going to see a lot more people moving into the healing professions, especially when it comes to nutrition and food and herbs and things that are very physical and tangible in that way. I think that this is a really important time for people to be moving into different forms of alternative medicine. Chiron is very connected to herbalism. Chiron is very connected to what is now considered alternative when it comes to healing, but was once considered the standard, the tradition. And so I think a lot of people are going to be jumping on that bandwagon even more so than they already are. And I think that we're going to have a lot of Taurus, a lot of Virgo, and a lot of Capricorn influence on that area, on that path. Now, this is also a very positive healing energy for the signs of Cancer and Pisces because Chiron will be sextiling your sun, moon, or rising sign, which again is an opportunity for healing. So for these signs, healing will come a lot more easily, but you're going to have to take action on it. Something's going to come up that you're going to have to deal with, but it's going to be very apparent what to do, and you're going to have the support that you need in order to make that happen. Shortly after Chiron enters Taurus, we're going to have the sun moving into the sign of Cancer on the summer solstice on June 21st. This is in the northern hemisphere, the longest day of the year where we have the most light. The sun is is shining the brightest. And this is also the start of Cancer season. And so Cancerian energies are going to be highlighted even more so than they already have been. This is a very Cancerian month because of that Jupiter-Venus conjunction in Cancer, because Mercury will retrograde in Cancer, but the Sun in Cancer highlights things a little bit differently. And so Cancerian themes, again, of nurturing, of support, of intuition, of emotion, with connecting and celebrating with people that feel like family, those are all going to be coming up around the time of the summer solstice. And if you are a Cancer sun sign, happy birthday, happy solar return, and I am wishing you all the best energy for your year ahead. And now we're starting to progress into what is by far the most active day of the entire month of June, which is the 29th. But before we get there, we have a little positive burst of forward momentum with Mars in the sign of Taurus, sextiling Jupiter. Now Mars, when it's in the sign of Taurus, likes to think things through. It likes to take its time. It likes to make sure that things are correct and comfortable and safe before it progresses. And so it takes some time to kind of get things in motion. But with this Mars sextile to Jupiter, this is going to be kind of a push to take advantage of an opportunity that is kind of a no-brainer. It's comfortable, it's safe, it's supportive. You have the green light to actually make it happen. And so the fire and air signs are going to be impacted the most by this brief but positive burst of energy and motivation just before Mars actually changes signs and moves into Gemini on June 28th, the very next day. So this is kind of the last chance to do that Taurus thing, to, buy that luxurious item, to take advantage of something on a material level, to take action on maybe one of the opportunities that came up earlier in the month that's starting to come back around as Mercury is stationing. Then on the 28th of June, Mars changes signs and moves into the communicative sign of Gemini. Now, when Mars is in Gemini, our attention is very split and our actions are very split as well. It's a good energy for starting a lot of new projects, but not necessarily bringing them to completion. We might feel like we want to take action on so many things all at once. Just be careful, because this is an energy where we're going to be starting a lot of projects for a lot of us, especially if you have strong Gemini energy, if you have strong mutable sign energy in Sagittarius, Virgo, or Pisces. You might be getting a lot off the ground, but then changing course and shifting quite a bit, and it might not necessarily lead you somewhere. So pick and choose what it is that you're initiating wisely during this time period. Now for Libra and for Aquarius, this is a very ambitious time where you're going to get a lot of momentum going, where you're going to be feeling very motivated to do the thing. And this could actually be very positive, especially if you're able to either focus your energy a little bit more and cut out the excess, or if what you're aiming to do is to take a lot of different pieces and put them together and integrate them into one thing that you are actually moving forward with. And so this is a great time for, a lot of people. However, I will say that Mars entering Gemini, now that said, Mars in Gemini at the start is going to be a little bit more challenging, because Mars is building toward that big Mars-Uranus conjunction that comes exact on July 4th. This is an explosive energy. This is an energy where something comes in and shocks us and shakes us to our core. This is an energy where we have to change something very abruptly, very quickly. And there are a lot of different factors to weigh in on before we actually make that change. And so this is a period of time now through really the first half of July where things are going to feel a little bit more unsettled. Things are going to feel a little bit more disruptive and disrupted. This is a time where we might see in the collective very shocking things coming out of the blue to change our course. Or this could be a time where we see heightened energy and volatility around martial themes, which are things like violence, which are things like war, which are things like weapons. And so I hope that's not the case, but sometimes it is the case. And so on a personal level, this is the time in the month where the energy really shifts. For some of you, you might be feeling more frazzled, more frustrated, more anxious and unsettled, especially if you have your sun, moon, or rising sign in any of the mutable signs. So that's going to be, again, Gemini, Sagittarius, Virgo, or Pisces. And so that's something to make note of here. But for others who have a lot of energy, let's say in Libra or in Aquarius, you're going to be feeling this change in a way that's much more positive. And so we'll talk about this a lot more in our forecast for July, because that's when this is really coming exact, is July July 4th. And so until then, just know that things are starting to feel a little less stable at the end of this month. And then we get to the big day, June 29th. This is when we're having 3 major energies happening all at once. Not only will Mercury be stationing to go retrograde at 26 degrees, activating that Jupiter-Venus conjunction from the start of the month, but we are going to have a full moon in the sign of Cancer, which is going to be making a very interesting square to Neptune. And Jupiter is changing signs. Yes, this is happening all at once. And so let's start with the first thing first. We've been talking about this Mercury retrograde. And so this Mercury station doesn't feel like the worst possible thing because Mercury stationing in that alignment with that Jupiter-Venus energy that's still kind of fresh, still kind of settled. And so looking at the Mercury retrograde sort of in isolation, it's starting out in a way that is pretty positive because we have that activation of that really benefic energy that was supporting us and bringing an opportunity that we might be rethinking or rehashing or might come back around in a new way, or we might just realize that we need to kind of rethink some of what we have moved forward with already so we can take better advantage of that opportunity as Mercury goes direct later on. But this is also Mercury in a conjunction with Jupiter, the great benefic, at the very, very, very end of Cancer, because it's literally just about to change signs later in that day. And so this is the last chance to get that insight, to get that opportunity, to get that message through that is going to bring us those beautiful exalted Jupiter benefits in whatever area of life is being impacted. And so this is going to be a very positive insight that could come through for people who have a lot of Cancer energy, a lot of Scorpio, a lot of Pisces. This is even really good for Taurus or for Virgo people because of that sextile that it's making, especially if you have your sun, moon, or rising sign. Anywhere, I would say from 25 to 30 degrees especially, you're going to be feeling this the most, and you're going to be feeling this the most positively. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the video, the cardinal signs might have more Mercury retrograde hiccups and problems. Your emotions might get the better of you if you are somebody who has a Libra, an Aries, or a Capricorn rising during this time, especially as Mercury ventures deeper and deeper backward into the sign of Cancer, and Jupiter leaves the sign of Cancer. And so that luck, good fortune, opportunity, optimism starts to sort of fade away. This is where you might be feeling overly emotional or letting your emotions lead the way with decisions that really do require some rational, logical, or linear thinking. And so also on the same day, we have a full moon in the sign of Capricorn. So when the moon is in Capricorn, it's actually in its detriment. And so this is a time where people are more prone to closing themselves off from their emotions, which sort of has the opposite effect of that Mercury station in the sign of Cancer, which is very emotionally driven. And so this could be a time where we are internalizing something, because when Mercury stations, when Mercury goes retrograde, it's more about internalizing our thoughts. It's more about our inner experience as opposed to expressing things more outwardly. And when we do try to express things more outwardly, there are blockages, there are miscommunications, there are things that don't quite land the way that we want them to. And especially with this cold and calculating moon in Capricorn, not super cold and calculating, but again, it's like an energy of distancing yourself from your emotions, bottling them up, not necessarily wanting other people to see your vulnerabilities. And also maybe not even trusting your intuition when you really should be, because there is this energy here of this T-square to Neptune where we're going to be more sensitive at this time. Like emotionally, everybody's feeling more sensitive and more touchy, but they're just not saying it, and they're like bottling it up and holding it in, which I think is kind of an interesting thing. This is also in a T-square with Saturn, and this is a major activation of the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. And so issues that came up around the end of February and again in April for people might be coming back around in a new way, or might be highlighted in some way. So you might have to actually do something or deal with it. And so this could be a call to restructuring or a call to reinforcing or creating different boundaries for some people on a very personal level. Collectively, we could see more of the energies that have been carried out on the world stage around all of those things that we've been seeing as connected to the Neptune-Saturn conjunction, which I talked about in a separate video that you can watch after this, where I gave an all signs forecast. And also I talked about the collective impact with mundane astrologer Dan Waits from World Astrology Report in another video that I will also link down below. Now, this full moon is impacting all of the cardinal signs the most, especially if you have your sun, moon, and rising sign at the first 10 degrees of Aries, Cancer, Capricorn, or Libra. Those of you that have these configurations are going to be experiencing this in a way that's a little bit more challenging and a little bit more stressful. And I would say that this full moon is going to be the nicest for Taurus people in particular. I would say Virgo as a secondary influence, but Virgo is ruled by Mercury stationing, and so their day might be a little weird, but the full moon is helping at least. And then finally, what is probably the most important shift that's happening in this entire month is Jupiter moving into the sign of Leo. Now, when this first occurs, it's not going to feel as big and open and expansive and jovial and optimistic and showy and flashy and positive and generous as it will later on down the line. And this is for two reasons. First, Jupiter is moving from the sign of its exaltation where it feels the best, where it has the most support, where it's able to bring the brightest and most expansive blessings into a sign where it's not supported in the same way. It's also moving into an opposition to Pluto, which is all about intensity. Now, I have seen a lot of circumstances where these Jupiter-Pluto oppositions bring extreme changes, but I've also seen where this makes things really intense. And so while we will be experiencing Jupiter's blessings and benefits and opportunities in a brand new area of life, we might also be feeling a lot of intensity brewing. We might be seeing some very dramatic changes that show up at the very onset that could ultimately be positive, but it feels like a lot all at once. It feels overwhelming even. Now, this Jupiter opposition to Pluto doesn't come exact until July 20th. And throughout the entire month of July, we're having a lot of strange and intense and somewhat positive outer planet configurations where essentially every single outer planet is touching one another. They're all making these really powerful sextiles and oppositions. And so Jupiter is not just opposing Pluto, but it's also going to be in a sextile with Uranus in Gemini. It's also going to be in a trine with Neptune in Aries. And that's part of a broader outer planet configuration where Neptune is also sextiling Pluto. And so we're going to talk about this really in depth in next month's forecast because this is huge and wild. And so I've never seen anything like this in the entire time that I've been practicing astrology. And so this warrants probably its own forecast, probably its own all signs forecast, which I'll do later on. And we are definitely doing a separate all signs forecast for Jupiter transiting the sign of Leo because this is a 12 to 13 month transit. It's going to be lasting for an entire year. And the beginning is just the beginning, right? So we're having some weirdness. It's entangled with a lot of other planetary energies at the very onset and bringing about these connections that are going to be impacting us across many different areas of life. But then it moves on and we start to feel more of that Leo vibe. But for now, I'll leave you with the fact that the fire signs are going to be getting the most Jupiter blessings. And so that's not just Leo, but that's also Aries and Sagittarius. You're also going to be feeling this very positively if you have sun, moon, or rising in Gemini or in Libra. And even if you have sun, moon, or rising in the fixed signs where Jupiter will be making a square to your planets, it's still going to be positive. But again, this is an energy where you might be overdoing it in some way, where things might move in extremes, especially at the beginning, in a way that feels very overwhelming, where it feels like a lot is changing or happening all at once, or too many opportunities are coming your way, and the shift is so big that you don't know how to handle it. It could also be that the reality of the situation does not meet your expectations as you go through and come across and take advantage of the opportunities that Jupiter brings over these next 12 months. And so if you are a sun, moon, rising in Taurus, in Scorpio, or in Aquarius, just know that good things are coming, but you're going to have elevated expectations for those things, and the things that come in that exceed your expectations might do so in a way that is a little too much. And you're going to have to still deal with it. From the outside looking in, people are going to be like, wow, this is great. Like, what are you complaining about? But you might not feel that way about it. And so again, we will touch on on this very in depth in our next forecast, where we will be getting into all 12 signs in just a couple of weeks here. So make sure you're subscribed to my channel. And I think this is pretty much the end of the month. And so I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a comment below. If you didn't like this format, you can tell me that too. That's completely fine. Also, make sure you like the video and share it with a friend who you feel like could benefit from the information that I'm sharing with you today about the month ahead, so they can navigate more effectively as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, everyone.